All right, all right. Cool. So
Yes.
what is up?
What is up? My name is Job Liddy. We got Makoa in the house with us.
What up, yo? It's working this time.
Yeah. So we're just getting started. This is episode number 1 of the Observer Effect. It's an idea that we've had for a little over a year, and it's manifested into this. So we're going to get started. Just a little bit about myself. I've been interested in, basically what consciousness is about for a long time. Really been, studying it for the past 15 years. I don't know if anyone knows who Michael Bernard Beckwith is, but he was one of the featured speakers in the movie The Secret. I've been working with his organization on the media team for about 10 years now. So I get, a steady fill of metaphysics and just, esoteric types of teachings, and do a lot of conversing with people about how consciousness works, what life is about, different things like that. And, Makoa and I actually connected because of that, just randomly on Facebook, I think right before the pandemic started.
Yeah, it was right about when shit hit the fan, bro.
Yeah, man.
It's cool how that works, right?
Seriously. And, when, we see a lot of people always complaining about social media and how it doesn't work. And I always try to remind myself and others that, it's just another tool.
That's a great point.
And it's the user that gives the tool its power. So if you use it for the right reasons, and it can do amazing things for you. I've made ridiculous connections over social media with people. I mean, it's done a lot for me and my networking, and that's something that I want to talk about in the future, in later episodes, about how all this works in your everyday life.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. That'll be a good show. We're gonna have lots of good shows.
Indeed.
All right, we got Kira 7. What's up? Tuned in. Welcome in.
Much love.
We got to drop. 7. I'll drop in the Zoom link. Anyone wants to join in on Zoom, be part of the conversation, I'll grab that. Let's go. Let's see.
Yeah, and I'll get let us know how we sound out there. And yeah, just while we're getting things ready, a few more things, just a little background on myself, and then we'll get some background on Makoa once he's done. I've been DJing for, over 20 years. I started in like 96. I've been drumming for about 15 years or so. I started in like 2000 something. And, I've always been super into music. And once I understood that music is actually used as a healing medium, I really got into learning more about that and how frequencies really affect our body, because ultimately everything is energy, and energy is waveforms. It's vibration.
Everything, even the rocks that look like they're solid are vibrating on a molecular level.
Oh yeah. Science is proving that basically reality is 99.99999% open space. Material, actual physical mass is only like 0.00001% of our actual reality.
Do you know what they call that stuff? That no. Physical space? Orgone.
Orgone. Yeah.
Right? Right? It's
and
it's
orgonite. And I've heard of orgonite.
Yeah, there's orgonite. Orgone is like, they can't explain what it is, but they know it's there. It's all that extra space. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you just reminded me of this one dude that like was doing a bunch of research on it in like the early 1900s. I don't remember his name right now. His first name started with an H. That's all I remember. If anyone tuned in knows what I'm talking about.
First name with an H?
Yeah, okay. Or maybe his last name. I don't know.
Hanel? Charles Hanel?
No, that's not who I'm thinking about. But if he's another person, then
Charles Hanel is like, he wrote the Master Key System. I think I've told you about that, and like that is basically where a lot of the self-help stuff, like The Secret, came from, right? This is like way back when he first wrote it. It's a great book. If you can get the complete Master Key System, it's like kind of like it broken down more, kind of like Master Key System for Dummies in a way, or just like expanded and easier to read and stuff. Really good stuff. That like changed the game for me, bro. Really gave me strong insight on how to meditate.
Nice. Yeah, I know about the Master Key Society, and it's funny because they got a lot of their inspiration from this dude named Wallace D. Wattles. He wrote the book The Science of Being Rich, and he also wrote the book The Science of Being Great. And like, I mean,
I love it because it is a science.
It is.
Yeah.
And what I love about this stuff is that it's all about focusing on practicing and not just philosophizing, not just theorizing, but like living it and practicing it to see how it all really works. Because ultimately, the search is for how things work, not necessarily to prove that you're right about something specific. You know what I mean?
Love it. Sneaky Snares, what's up, dude? I dropped in the
much love, Sneaky.
I dropped in the Zoom link again. So yeah, a couple things I'm noticing. I should actually, I'm going to get a pen so I can write down notes on how to, keep improving this a little bit. We should get like obviously the Zoom link into Stream Elements so it's automatically dropping in. I'll be right back.
Yeah, and so while we wait for Makoa, I guess we'll just do a little bit more background on what this show is all about. Like I said, we started talking about basically having an open discussion with people about life and the things that work for us, the things that don't work for us, our habits, basically creating, for lack of a better term, a support group where we all come together and practice becoming the best version of ourselves, whatever that might look like. And ultimately what we really want to do is create a space where, again, we practice where there's no judgment, no guilt, no blame, no shame. Because I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. But, one of the things he says is you just have to be very observant of how you use your word. You want to not make assumptions. You want to not take things personally, and you want to do your best. We really have to make sure that when we make mistakes, we practice not judging ourselves or, guilting or going through a guilt trip or blaming ourselves, because that is basically going against ourselves. And when we go against ourselves, we are doing it in reverse, let's say, because another thing that we really want to work on here is practicing not staying limited to the paradigms of good or bad or right or wrong or, good versus evil. Those are things that limit us from being open to other possibilities. So it's something that we also want to practice.
Basically, we want to like keep the feed to our inner light, like the Bunsen burner. We want to keep that feed open. We want to keep that valve open. And it's like if we're working against ourselves in certain ways, we're just like adding resistance to what we want to achieve in the long run,
Yeah. And, a lot of that has to do with letting go and surrendering and being more open to letting the universe do what it does instead of trying to necessarily control.
Yeah, that's huge.
How it does it.
Yep.
Because focusing on a specific goal is really important. We don't want to be vague. At the same time,
specific is the way to be.
Specific about the goal, not necessarily how it's going to happen. Because apparently from the quantum physics standpoint, the more we focus on the unknown, the more we are open to possibility. Because if we focus on the known, then we're going to get something we've already experienced, which means we're not creating a new life. We're just re-experiencing our old life. So the more we focus on the unknown, the more we open ourselves to a new life, because now we're open to something that we haven't experienced yet.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, dude. And it's something that I want to talk a little bit more about after we watch the video, because it has a lot to do with being vulnerable. Yeah. Because if you're not open to something, if you're closed off so much that you don't even see your boundaries, then how are you going to work on that? And that's ultimately what this show is all about, is practicing the observer effect. Let's observe it and see what thoughts come from it, instead of just doing our our super built-in immediate reaction habits. Those are the things that we need to break in order to become a new self.
Yeah, and a huge part of my shift in the past couple of months here is like that original emotion that it gets triggered from a situation is now a sign for me to slow down and like take it all in what's happening, and then say, hey, how can you approach this situation with compassion right now? Right? Instead of having that like knee-jerk reaction that I used to have, and just that alone has made such a huge difference. Such a huge difference.
That's dope, man. And honestly, like from what I'm starting to understand, that's really all you need to do is be conscious of it when it's happening, because that alone creates enough space for you to change it if you have the right tools in order to change it. Like we talked about earlier when we were talking about how
access to those tools, right? Like I think every human on the planet, in the universe, has all the tools they need inside them. Right? Oh, yeah. It's like, do they know how to access them though? Right? Are they working against themselves like we were saying before? Right? Like how much can they really help themselves by just going within themselves to find everything that they already have? I think that's a huge part of what the show is going to be about.
Definitely. And really quick, just a huge shout out to Esteban26 over on the Twitch channel. We see you, brother. Thanks for tuning in.
What's up?
Yeah. And just to expand a little bit on what you're talking about, that's why being present is so important, because when you're present, you're not in your pre-programmed habits. So again, it creates that space for you to be able to create a shift.
And that's a really cool point, bro. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And while we think, that, because a lot of the times we see people's fruit and not the root, a lot of like, I've read a couple of articles that talk about.
We see the fruit and not the root. Is that what you just said? That is sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And it basically talks about like, what were you going to say?
Well, it plays off of the vulnerability, right? Like people are showing the fruit, but like, what's the root, right? Like what's them deep down? And are they comfortable enough to live their everyday life in a public state, in like at work, like in every situation? Are they comfortable enough to really be that root, right? To be themselves and not live under a mask, So it totally plays into this first show.
Yeah. And, getting to the root is part of the journey. And, one of the tools is, a metaphorical shovel. Until you can really start digging, how are you going to find the roots? And how far down the roots will you get?
Yeah, dude.
If you don't have a shovel and you're only working with your hands, that's limiting. And it's all based on our mind.
How much, I'm going to throw this in there too. It's like, how many substances was I using that clouded that whole, it didn't give me a shovel. Like, right? Like, how am I supposed to figure out what's going on and what's within me if I'm just using a bunch of things that take me out, that just takes me out of that whole space? Right. So like, that's, the clarity that I've gotten in the past couple months here too, is like, it helps and it's tough. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work, but that's all in there. It's in everybody. And like you're saying, man, as soon as you start digging and you start discovering it, you're really it's life-changing.
Definitely. And not to get too far off topic, but can you do me a favor and take off the non-video participants in the gallery mode, so we can take off that bottom one, because that's just my computer.
Okay, so how do I do that out of the view?
You got to go in your settings in that little zoom window. The zoom window with the with the settings.
And then what am I taking? Oh, hide non-video participants. Booyah.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Let's go. So I'll just keep copy and pasting this meeting ID into the chat. There you guys go again. We have the password observers. Anyone is welcome. I guess, are we going to hit it with this video on vulnerability?
What time are we at? We're at 4:20. Why not? Watch the video.
Are you serious? That's great. It is 4:20 West Coast. All right, so this is about a 20-minute video. Brenna Brown she is a leader. This is her TED Talk. She's a leader on vulnerability, is changing lives all across the world. So we're gonna watch her video and then we'll discuss a bunch of things after. Let's get it going. So I'm gonna do OBS. Oh, you know what I didn't think of is how to get it into the Zoom. But at least I'll get it.
All right. Well, while he's waiting, or while he's taking care of that,
yeah, we'll get better at this. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, while we take care of the tech stuff, we can throw in little tidbits of information that people, might not necessarily understand about.
Go for it.
The foundation of what we're talking about. Just to start, quantum physics. If people aren't super familiar with it, basically, it talks about how we're all connected through an invisible field, and that field, like we were talking about earlier, isn't just open space. It's actually consciousness itself, because consciousness doesn't need form. Consciousness is a vibration, and vibration is energy, right? And I don't know if people are familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he talks about becoming more energy and less matter. And just something for everyone to look up if they're interested in, look up breaking down the waveform. It's basically talking about the concept of becoming more energy and less matter, because you can manipulate energy a lot easier than you can matter, because matter literally is the heaviest, most condensed form of energy in the universe, because it's actually a physical thing. But yeah, we'll get more into that.
I think we're ready. I think we're ready with the video.
Let's get the video going.
Let's go.
In indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
I want to start with two questions that I really want you to think about. And the two questions are, what should I be afraid of today? And who's to blame? What should scare me and whose fault is it? To me, these are the most profoundly dangerous questions that we center our lives around. And what they are indicators, to me, what they're indicators of is a culture of scarcity, a culture of not enough. And when you think about any milieu in your life, think about education. What are we supposed to be afraid of, and who's to blame? Politics, the economy, social issues. I guarantee you, if you turn on the news or opened a paper today, the focus would be, here's why you should be afraid and here's whose fault it is. And what's interesting to me about that is it's not just at a cultural level or a community level. That stuff happens in my house every week. Every week with my husband, I talk to him about what should be, why we should be fearful and whose fault it is. Mostly it's his. But if something doesn't go well at my daughter's school, then I'm like, oh my God, this is going to have huge implications for our university. And we should be terrified right now that she's not getting cursive. I know she's 4, but this is still relevant. It's indicative of scarcity. So let's talk about what scarcity culture is and what it looks like. Scarcity culture, I think, is best understood with a simple question of never enough. And you can fill in the blanks. Never good enough, safe enough, certain enough, perfect enough, relevant enough. And perhaps I think one of the most dangerous and insidious messages today is never extraordinary enough. Somehow, in the world we live in today, an ordinary life has become synonymous with a meaningless life. And it has huge, and I've watched it happen not only as a researcher, I'm a qualitative researcher, so I sit across from people and look in their eyes and I have a good sense of what's going on in their lives. But as a university professor who's been teaching for the last 17 years, it's been very clear to me that extraordinary means relevant. And the top one is the big one for all of us personally, never good enough. Which is shame, which we all have on occasion, that sense that we're not smart enough, good enough, perfect enough, loved enough, promoted enough. We're not enough. So what we do in response to scarcity culture, I think all of us every day, is this. We wake up in the morning and we armor up. And we put it on and we say, I'm going to go out in the world. I'm basically just going to kick some ass. I'm not going to let anyone see who I am. And in doing so, I can protect myself against the things that hurt the most. Judgment, criticism, fear, blame, ridicule. I'm going to armor up and I'm going to be safe. And we rationalize and we convince ourselves that this armor is really smart. And we use a lot of different things to armor too. Perfectionism, intellectualizing. But if you get really, really clear about what we're doing every morning when we wake up and decide to armor, it's this simple. This is what we're protecting. We're protecting being hurt for a very simple reason that no one really wants to talk about, which is this. Love, belonging, irreducible needs of men, women, and children. In the absence of love and belonging, there is always suffering. And so what we believe is that we can protect our sense of being lovable and being acceptable and being worth connection with armor. Here's the very worst news from my research. The news that above all other I did not want to hear is simply this. And I don't even want to say it to you because I think it's mean to say it. But it's so true. And it's simply our capacity for wholeheartedness can never be greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted, which is a terrible thing, but a truthful thing. That we can only love and be loved as much as we are willing to have our heart broken. And so when we move through the world like this, and with our partners, with our children, with our friends, in classrooms, with the people who work for us, with the people we work for, there are tremendous casualties. And in fact, I think the troublesome thing about doing this is that it doesn't really safeguard us from pain, but it does prevent us from accessing the things that vulnerability takes us to. Vulnerability is the path to love, belonging, joy, intimacy, trust, innovation and creativity, sympathy. So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? How many of you think about empathy and sympathy as very different things? A few people. Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. I'll tell you why. Empathy is feeling with people. So if Tim called, Tim, I'm going to use you as an example. Is that okay? Go ahead. Tim called and said, I just finished my rewrites on this article. I'm trying to think of something we have in common, which is writing. I just finished my rewrites on this article and they've sent it back again. And I just have this overwhelming feeling that nothing's going to please these folks. So to respond empathically or empathetically, you can say it either way, I would need to try to understand his perspective, stay out of judgment, recognize what he's feeling, and kind of communicate it back. Now, when you're teaching graduate students who are new to counseling, they like to go, "Oh, Tim, you must be feeling so sad. I feel that with you." Which is not exactly what empathy looks like. Painfully sometimes, maybe. But if he said that to me and I went, "Oh, shit, I hate that. Would you know? I've been there. I hate that. Or if I looked at him and said, or talked on the phone even and said, oh God, there's nothing worse than just keep on sending it in and sending it in. That's empathy. Empathy is, I'm feeling with you. Sympathy, I'm feeling for you. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is dark, deep hole. Ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? In Texas, in the South in general, in the U.S., we have the worst saying ever that just smacks and reeks of sympathy, which is if Tim called and said, I keep sending it in and they keep pushing it back. And I looked at you and said, bless your heart. How does that feel? It makes you pretty mad. Because basically what I'm saying is that sucks, but too bad, and God is on my side. I've decided I can make $1 million in Texas by simply selling a t-shirt that says, if you bless my heart, I'll punch your face. So sympathy is one of the things that really gets in the way of empathy, and sympathy is also often how we respond when we don't want to be vulnerable to someone else's struggle. Does that make sense? The next one, I'm going to get hot talking about it. I just know I'm going to go into a little shame, but then I'll pop right out. Nothing will, if you're on the first row, you're safe. Blame. How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? I'm like, hi, my name is Brene. I am a blamer. Let me just tell you this quick story. So this is a couple years ago when I first realized the magnitude to which I blame. I'm in my house, I have on white slacks and a pink sweater set, and I'm getting ready to go teach, and I'm drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen. It's a full cup of coffee. I drop it on the tile floor. It goes into a million pieces, splashes up all over me. And a millisecond after it hit the floor, right out of my mouth is this, damn you, Steve. Who is my husband? Because let me tell you how fast this works for me. So Steve plays water polo with a group of friends, and the night before he went to go play water polo. And I said, hey, make sure you come back at 10, because I can never fall asleep until you're home. And he got back at 10:30, chatting it up with his friends. And so I went to bed a little bit later than I thought, ergo my second cup of coffee that I probably would not be having had he come home when we discussed at 10. Therefore, okay, and let me just ask, because I'm going to assume that you're laughing with me, not at me. How many women in here are thinking, that makes absolute sense? And how many men in here are thinking, oh, that's how it works? Right. And so the rest of that story is, I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Steve calls, caller ID. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's going on, babe? What's going on? So I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I'm cleaning up the coffee that spilled all, like dial tone. Because he knows. You're not allowed to laugh. You're here in official capacity. How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? Even me. Like when I'm even I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. It gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the na-na-na-na thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability, meaning that people who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we expend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this. No, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger, which is really hard. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was. The last one is interesting. Empathy is not scripted. I can't say, okay, go forth and be empathic. Here's the decision tree. If they say this, do this. Empathy is about being present with someone. And if you're present and engaged and you take the armor off, you'll know what the person across from you needs. But more importantly, if you screw it up and you see in the eyes of the person that you're, who's sharing with you that you've screwed it up, you can go back and say, no, Tim, okay, wait, I'm just a hugger. I'm here, I'm with you. Keep telling me, I want to know. I want to be in this with you. The reason why I think that exercise is so helpful is, again, we all need different things from empathy. There are no hard and fast rules about what empathy looks like or sounds like, but there is one that I will share with you from the research. It is, rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. How does that feel? Who said awful? Awful. Awful. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better instead of leaning into, if I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. And so I want to close with this picture, because how many of you, when someone shares something with you, do you worry about saying the right thing or being helpful? For sure, I think most of us. So I love this photo, and the reason I'm sharing it with you is because sometimes the most profound and eloquent examples of empathy happen without any words, and sometimes not even with eye contact. To me, if I'm sitting next to you and I say, wow, I feel like everything's just, the wheels are falling off right now and things are out of control, and someone just puts their hand on top of my hand and squeezes, that says, with touch, I think, the two most important words in my work, which are me too. So thank y'all very much. I really appreciate it.
Simply for people who are not familiar with your work, possibly online or wherever, I think it's very important that you explain to people what the difference between shame and guilt is, because I think a lot of people have those two concepts mixed up in their mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's really key to your work that there is a big gap between those two concepts.
It's so funny because the people who really, like, I know, like we've talked about, you get the work in your bones, you live the work. But people who really know the work, like I talk about 1,000 different things, but the people who really like have their head and hearts around it always come back to that question. Like it's so I think what happens is when I talk about shame, people often say guilt because there's kind of shame, guilt, humiliation, and embarrassment. And they're all kind of what in research what we would call self-conscious affects or emotion. And in order to really move through this work and understand it, you have to separate them out. And the big two that we confuse is shame and guilt. So shame is I am bad, and guilt is I did something bad. So shame is a focus on self, guilt is a focus on behavior. And it seems like semantics, it seems like kind of an academic pet peeve thing, but it's really not because the outcomes are hugely different. So what we know from the research is that shame is highly, highly correlated with addiction, depression, aggression, violence, suicide, bullying, and almost more importantly, that guilt is inversely correlated with those outcomes. Meaning the more someone is able to separate themselves from their behaviors, the less likely it is that they'll end up in those situations or suffering from those struggles. And so the implications are huge, especially around, I think you and I have talked about parenting. You know, as it turns out, there is a tremendous difference between you're a bad girl and you're a great kid, but that was a bad choice.
If you say that doing something that you...
Yo, all right. So we're going to wrap the video there. Let's switch this over to Zoom.
Yeah, much love out to the Catnap and to Gremlin. We see you. Thanks for tuning in. Much love everyone else in the chat. Let us know you're here. We're about to open up the discussion. We'll let Makoa get all the tech stuff ready.
I think I got this one right. Oh, there we go. Zoom video.
Once again, while we're waiting, we're having an open discussion on vulnerability and how it affects our lives. We just watched a video by Brené Brown. She brought up a bunch of good points. I mean, I've got a bunch of notes that I want to go over, but if anyone else in the chat wants to join us in the Zoom or wants to give us some of their thoughts in the chat, please feel free.
That's what I gotta do. There we go. I think I got it this time. No.
Okay. I don't see us up on.
It's because there we go. We in. But I need to adjust it.
Yeah, Kura7 saying, you know, he liked the points that she made about being guarded. He sees a lot of that in himself. Hit that link, brother, if you want to come in and join the conversation.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to talk than to type.
Click the link. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for someone else to give us some of their thoughts, Makoa, you got anything? Because, like I said, I got some notes that I can go over.
Yeah, you could go first, bro, because I'm still trying to like get a hang of like engineering this freaking show.
Word. No, it's all good.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, one of the first things that she brought up, or actually it was the first two questions she uses in her introduction is, what should I be afraid of today, and who should I blame? And I'll be honest with you, the first time I watched that video, like I made so many assumptions after she said that, because I had an idea of where she was going, and yet she went in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I actually learned a lot from her in that video. I watched it a few times. But yeah, what should I be afraid of today? You know, isn't that one of the first things that comes into our mind when we wake up, especially if we tend to wake up late for work? Because already you're afraid of being late to work and of any kind of ramifications that might have, you know? So before you even get out of bed, you're already in panic mode, you know, and I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the fight or flight response, but that is something that is, you know, part of our natural instinct. And what it does is it helps us focus all of our energy in our outside environment to help us figure out where the danger is. And like we were talking about earlier, the more you focus on your outside environment, the more you focus on the physical. And since the physical is such a small part of our reality, you're actually focusing your energy in something that in one way or another is kind of like a jail cell, because physical matter, I mean, think about it. Our body is our soul having a shell, you know, so already, not to say that it's a bad thing to have a body, but I think you know what I mean. You know, it's something that puts limits on us when we focus on the physical. So if we focus on energy and again, you know, on the unknown and being more open and vulnerable, you know, would be something very, very helpful, you know, from one thing that I learned from this. And, you know, the second thing she asked was, who should I blame? You know, what we talked about as part of the practice that we do on this show is we practice not blaming or shaming or guilting or judging ourselves. And she mentioned all of those, you know, and again, it's because when we do that, we create an emotional attachment to that event. And since our emotions are the body's language, again, we get trapped in the body and in the physical, and it becomes harder for us to change and manipulate it, because now we're trying to change matter instead of energy. Because when it's energy and it's still formless, you can create whatever you want. You know, that's what alchemy is all about, is changing that energy. You know, a lot of the times, you know, a lot of people think that becoming spiritual means that you have to focus only on the light. And, you know, one thing we'll talk about a lot is the balance between the light and the dark. You know, that's going to be a big topic for our show. And, you know, it's changing the quote unquote bad or negative energy into something that's going to serve us. It's not that we're going to repress it or, you know, or try to do what some people call spiritual bypassing. We're not going to avoid it. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to meet it head on, except from a different standpoint. And instead of trying to fight with it, now we're going to dance with it, you know, because we need to become friends instead of enemies. Once you become friends, then you start learning how to work with each other. And, you know, from Carl Jung's point of view, he talks about making the unconscious conscious. You know, again, looking at our habits, which are our unconscious, and observing them, making the unconscious conscious. Now we're becoming conscious of those unconscious habits. So that's my little rant on that.
That's a lot of deep stuff, man.
Sorry.
I gotta, no, that's good. I need to like write down notes from like, because like my brain keeps just like, oh man, I want to respond to that, but I don't want to like cut in and like send you on a tangent and stuff. Cause that's what happened to me if I like get in a groove, and sometimes I'll forget what I'm saying if we go into tangents. One thing that I really, that hit home is she says, blaming is a reason we miss our opportunities for empathy. That's some shit right there.
Oh yeah. That's really good.
Blaming is a reason we miss our opportunities for empathy. And, you know, I love how you say dancing, because, you know, like it's so key to like just not try to fight stuff that, you know, like things are going to happen on a daily basis. And it's like just having the powerful, like just taking a deep breath and like just slowing down again and just being like, okay, you know, how I feel about this situation is real, and that's okay, right? This dude could have cut me off, or this thing could have happened, right? And it's like just the energy that we have from that situation is okay, right? Because we can channel it, and we can, you know, like within a few minutes feel better about the situation because we slowed down and we thought about, hey, maybe this person really needed to like go get a Big Mac and he's really hungry and it's all good. Just let him go. You know, like we don't have no idea what he's going through. Maybe he has to get to the hospital, right? And he cut me off. So it's like, it's having that feeling of being frustrated is real, and that's okay. It's going to happen, right? But how do we instead of fight it and basically feed the anger, how do we just say, hey, you know, that feeling is real and it's going to pass, right? I know in time, like this frustration will pass. And this guy, you know, something's up and that's okay. He's got to get to where he's got to get. And, you know, eventually I'm going to pass this whole feeling of getting frustrated about that, you know, and that's a way of dancing with that situation rather than, you know, literally cursing out loud, right? I used to curse out loud about the things that like I don't have control over, right? And like words are powerful, man. They are so powerful. And self-talk is so powerful, right? Like just, you know, setting up all this gear to do this show, right? Like I used to get so mad when I couldn't do it properly and it didn't work, right? And like 2 weeks ago when we tried to start this show, it didn't work and I didn't get mad. That was like one of the first times, you know, because I haven't really been doing too much of this stuff, you know, in the past 6 months, but I used to get so mad that time. You know what? It didn't work and it's okay. Like I failed, but what did we do in the last 2 weeks before this show? We figured out how to do it properly. Right. And that failure led to something positive. So it's like about failing forward. But it all starts with that original energy and how we can decide, like you said, to dance with it rather than, you know, react to it impulsively, you know, and basically, you know, put gas right on that anger, you know, that fire, right? We don't want to feed anger, you know, like, does that feel good? Does it really feel good? You know, especially like late at night when we're trying to pull this off and like, do I want to go to bed angry? No way, man. You know, like, and how many times I've done that? So many times, but you know, and that's okay, right? Because like it goes back into the concept of the yin and the yang, the dark and the light. It's like, I know what it feels like to feel good because I know what it feels like to be so fucking angry. You know, and like, I know there's a difference and I know feeling good is so much better. Feeling happy is so much better. Right. So stuff that happens throughout the day, it's going to happen. Right. It's always going to happen. Curveballs are thrown. Fastballs are thrown. Everything. We don't control what's coming down the pipeline, man. Right. But we control on how we deal with it, how we react and handle that energy.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you've made so many points. I want to touch on all of them, but there's so many. Like, you know, when you said taking the energy or taking the opportunity to observe the habit of getting mad and, you know, cursing someone out. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, and I do it all the time too. You know, I got mad road rage, but I've learned to basically just laugh it off.
Yeah.
You know, as I'm saying the bad words, I just start laughing at myself like, dude, you're doing it. Why are you doing that? That's ridiculous.
And you're catching it. You're notating.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the first step. The first step is us to realize what we're doing, like what the self-talk is, like what words are we actually saying? Right. Like words turn into actions or whatever that whole saying is, you know, eventually it ends up with you doing something you don't want to do, right? If you keep saying dumb stuff, right? So that first step of you noticing it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and then laughing about it. I do that too, man. It's good to laugh at yourself.
Yeah, and it's been proven scientifically that laughter is actually another form of healing, simply because of the vibration of it and all that. But you just reminded me of another thing that you were talking about is when you dance with it, that a lot of people, you know, you mentioned reminding yourself that this feeling is going to pass. What's important is to remember that we do need to take action in order for it to pass. Just saying it and stopping there.
Oh, that's something you were saying before, right? Like it made me remember just like how I'm getting a lot more executive functioning stuff done since I got clean. And all of that stuff not done, even though it might not necessarily like affect too much if you kind of push something off like for a little bit. But if you have a lot of that stuff, even if like you had set the intention years ago to like do certain things and like it's just life got busy and like that, all that stuff, even though we're not really conscious of it, it really piles up unconsciously.
Oh yeah.
It really does. And it'll lead to anxiety. Anxiety can lead to depression because you're like in a spin, like you can't get out. Right. So it's like, that's just another thing that the clarity of that I've been experiencing has been helping, because it's like, you know, just the accomplishing of setting this gear up to get this show engineered and ready to go. Right. Huge win. And it feels good to get that stuff done. And I'm just realizing recently that all that stuff that was kind of like put aside because I couldn't get to it. And life does get busy, but trying to, you know, having the ability to like set the schedule and actually start doing these things a little bit at a time and being okay with not getting it all done right away. Right. It's such a relief to be able to do that, you know, and because I think that's something like you mentioned earlier. It's like things that can, you know, get built up like subconsciously, unconsciously, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, just to expand a little bit about what you were talking about, like all the feelings and stuff getting pent up and just basically leading like to depression and things like that. It's because, again, like we were talking about earlier, everything is energy and everything has a vibration. So all of those thoughts carry a vibration. And since emotion is the language of the body, those vibrations literally get trapped in our body, and that's what weighs us down. And that's what really starts to affect the way our health goes, because I'm not sure how familiar people are with epigenetics, but basically epigenetics is a science that's been, you know, pioneered by a few different people. And it's basically proving through science that our thoughts actually control the expression of our genes. They don't change our genes specifically. They change the way they express themselves. And the way our genes express themselves are what dictate our health. So, you know, if we're constantly expressing that we're sick, our genes literally say, okay, well, let me express that sickness for you. And then it comes in the way. Yeah, I mean, we can get super into this.
That's going to be a show. Emotion, remember? That you're reminding me of Emotion from Gaia. So we should, I'll grab some clips from that. That was really good. I know we want to keep videos to like 20 minutes and something. A huge point that I pulled from this as well was stop using the at least response.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that was a huge one.
Wow. That was like huge. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's so like, as soon as like she exposed it, I'm like, wow, yeah, that does kind of suck, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, I always felt like I had to say something. And I didn't know what to say. And she just simply says, like, I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm glad you told me. That's how huge is that? That's such an amazing response. I'm glad you told me is so strong, because it basically, you know, it brings that relationship, it bonds that relationship more. I'm glad you told me. Like that is It's just huge, and you know, I'm glad. I'm glad I pulled that, because you know it's something I'm going to be conscious about. Is to, you know, hold back on being like, at least, you know, it's just trying to do the silver lining. I get it.
Yeah. And it's also a note that I took, you know, when she said, it's not about having a response, it's about making a connection. And like you said, it forms a bond. And it's because you've let them know that you're there, again, creating a space that has no judgment or anything attached to it. It's just someone else being present with you to feel that support.
And talking and listening, and listening to it, because just talking about things helps heal the body. It helps so much. That's why that was a huge point for vulnerability in general for us starting the show, is we want people to feel comfortable that they can come on this show and they can be themselves and they can contribute, because there's a lot that we can take away from listening to a show. But as soon as you start participating in a vulnerable way, you're going to heal yourself exponentially faster. Right.
Definitely.
And it's like, I know that from going away, you know, and getting detoxed and being in the treatment and stuff, is that, you know, as a group, we were able to achieve so much together because our group let down our guard. We as a group, and we just got it out, and we started, you know, we were there for each other. When we, you know, each day, each hour, we were all discovering different parts that were just like, oh shit, moments of like our childhood or different things like that. And we would not have grown and gotten through that if we never said it, you know? So just that first step of saying it is what we want to be able to like encourage everybody to be able to do when they join us.
Yeah, dude. And you actually made me think of an analogy we could use. You know, we were talking about earlier how those emotions get trapped in us as a vibration. When you speak it like you're talking about, you're literally exercising that demon from your body, because now you've let the vibration out through saying it. And now it's back into the quantum. And since it's energy now you can manipulate it into something positive and something that will work for you. And now you're creating that emotional bond to that experience in a positive way, and now you can start growing that.
That's alchemy.
And making that and then that becomes the habit.
That's so cool.
You know, and it's something I talk about a lot in my show. I do a show called Meditation Breaks every couple of weeks, every other Saturday on Jungle Train, and I throw in a little, you know, tidbits here and there, basically of just getting familiar with the feeling of feeling whole or feeling complete. Because if you're complete, then you are no longer feeling anxiety or fear or anything else, because you feel like you have everything you need. And now you're looking at everything from a different perspective, because you're literally living from a different vibration.
It's an exercise. Everything we're talking about is work. And I love everyone to understand that is it takes daily effort, but it's the most rewarding thing that you can do for yourself, is to just do this work every day and be conscious about what's going on, you know? And
totally.
I haven't had an anxious episode. Like, there's no anxiety, like, you know, and it's like, I got off all of the anti-anxiety meds and all the, you know, antidepressant meds, all that stuff, you know, I haven't needed any of it because I've dove into this stuff, this alchemy, this behavioral therapy, this consciousness, this awareness, presence, all that stuff. And it's a daily thing. It's a daily grind, but it's such a feel good grind, if that makes sense, right? Because it's like, no matter what, all the shit's going to be there, right? Like the curveballs are going to be thrown at us. It's always going to be there. But now it's like an awareness factor of how to deal with it, so it doesn't lead to more of those. You know, it's like now that's time spent in that negative dwelling, in that state is far less time in that state, because we exercise, you know, the methods of passing that energy. Just, okay, here you go. Here it comes. All right, there you go. All right, ground it, you know, and that's done by just the simple things of recognizing it when it happens. And then laughing it off, thinking about something we're appreciative, like, 2-year-old daughters, talking in the background,
Yep, she's over here hanging out with us.
I love it.
Getting that high vibe conversation in.
So it's crazy how this whole thing has come to this, because it feels so good to do this. And, rewind pre-COVID to just like randomly, becoming friends on Facebook. It's, and then what's up, little one?
Yeah, now we're here.
And now we're here.
I haven't gotten her permission to put her on camera, so that's why she's...
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, it has been a crazy journey, and honestly, like, I want to talk about this so much. It's just we're hitting that hour mark, and
I get it.
If anyone is enjoying this, just know that we're going to have a lot more conversations, and please feel free to join us and be part of it, because that really is a key component of this show, is having the audience interact with us and give us their perspectives. Just real quick before we head out, want to say what's up to my boy Enough Talk at 808. Thanks for tuning in, my brother. Thank you again to Kuda7, the Catnap, Esteban, to Gremlin, everyone else that joined in, anyone in the archive listening in. We
Sneaky Snare stopped in tonight. Much love, brother.
Sneaky. Master Bass Windu, thank you for being here. She's actually part of a little group that I met with last month, that we basically, I didn't know about it at the time, but we were basically practicing for this show. We started having conversations about this kind of stuff and just interacting and getting a lot of really good insight from each other. We learned a lot. We did some practices.
Awesome.
And yeah, man, now it's, sharpening my sword for this show. And again, really want to thank everyone for being present with us, for consciously tapping into the vibrations and the frequencies of love, abundance, joy, gratitude, being in the attitude of gratitude, because that's what starts the whole cycle. And that's another thing we'll talk about later on. But
the attitude of gratitude. That's how we start every meeting at work. That's nice. That's how we put it. The attitude of gratitude. I love it.
Yeah, man.
All right.
I'm glad that that's getting more out there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. Like how it started with me with behavioral therapy, and just like all this type of stuff that we're talking about really started when I got this other job in like 2017. And I mean, we'll get into it. It's been a effort. It's been effort ever since, So we're going to do this weekly, I guess, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sundays?
We'll talk more about the schedule.
Okay.
I want to make it consistent, but definitely know that we will be doing more of these, and everyone else is invited.
Yes.
Tell your friends if you enjoy the conversation, and because we're definitely looking for people that want to have these conversations. It's a big part of us sending bursts of energy that we feel will benefit
What's up, Constant?
The planet. Oh, our boy Constant.
What's up, dude?
What's up to you and Emily, brother?
All right, so this was a great show. I guess we'll do an outro with a little bit of beats here.
Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is episode 1 of The Observer Effect, where we practice being present, being conscious, observing ourselves. We'll talk a lot about habits in the coming shows. We got a lot of topics that I think will be helpful for all of us, because again, ultimately what we're trying to do is help everyone become the best version of themselves.
All right, dude. Awesome show, bro.
Congrats, brother. 4 weeks, no alcohol. Beautiful, Constant.
Oh, look at this. See, he's living the life of clarity. Get it, dude. You got this,
actually,
man.
one thing before we leave.
I'm like, go 65, 70 days here.
Oh, there you go, brother. Yeah, I wanted to invite everyone to share a win, because that's actually something we talked about at Agape today, was share a win. And, my win is we got the show going. You got all the tech figured out, which I much appreciate.
Yeah.
I much appreciate.
I'm so grateful for that. Yes.
Yeah, so I want to recognize that win. And, I recognize the win of us getting through the show and having a great conversation. I hope everyone else got something of value from this, because I know I did.
Yes. So I think I got some. There's some music.
Things will run smoother the more we keep doing this.
The more I learn how to use this mixer in front of me. Yes.
This is how you do it when it's live, y'all.
Yep.
Much appreciated.
It's going to get better. All right. Jeff, dude, I appreciate you, man. This was great.
Appreciate you too, brother. Thank you for your time. Thank you for putting in all the tech. And thank you, everyone, for participating. And honestly, we really, really do appreciate you. Many blessings to you all. And if you haven't heard it yet, you're worth it.
If you haven't heard it, you're worth it.
Yep. All good, Brother Constant. We'll talk later for sure. Until next time, y'all.
Peace. Y'all.
Say